Coaching in Session,
your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Welcome, Cesar Cardona, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Today we're going to be talking about your work and specifically about the mindfulness work and the journey that you have had in your life thus far, because you have a very unique journey, different than, I guess you can say, the typical norm of what a person might experience. And what I will say, just from reading about you and learning more about you, is that in a sense, it's so fulfilling of like all the things you have been doing. And yet many people in the world today, they chase materialistic good, outside pleasures. And yet you found peace in, the mind and others in a sense. So, like our conversation today is definitely going to be one that's going to be different for the individual's audience in the Coaching in Session. But if you could, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and of course, how you help?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Cesar Cardona. I am a public speaker. I am also a mindfulness meditation teacher. And the way I help people is a few ways. The first way is help them realize that actually what they need, what they're searching for, is not out in the world. It starts inside first. And then I show them how to pull away the expectations of the things that society has given us so we can see the true value of who we are internally. And that can be a spiritual thing. It could be a practical, non-spiritual thing. Whatever words you use for it is the words you use for it. Regardless, whoever you are as a person, you have already what it takes. My job is just to help you find it.
Mm-hmm. You brought up the words needs and expectations. And those words can be a bit confusing for an individual because society is going to create expectations for what you need. But today we're going to be learning about what we need and not really having an outside stimulus, have any power over that. It's going to be us deriving what are our needs, and maybe we create our own expectations for ourselves. I wanted to get into the difference of society's expectations for our needs versus our needs necessary for our own growth and fulfillment.
Sure. The first thing first, just a bit of a modification there. The external things, they don't not have power. It's how you respond and transcend through it, right? As a Buddhist, the Buddhist has a lot of things about this. One of them is don't get shot with one arrow twice, right? Don't get bit by the snake and then chase the snake and say, why did you bite me? Pivot from there, modify and understand what's going on, right? So the external, without question, is going to have effect on you. It's what you do with it. It's the part of what you are able to let go of that is more important for how you respond to it externally. And I say letting go of, not what you can control. What you can let go of is where the key is there. So yeah, that you have these two external sides. You have the societal expectations of this world, in this industrialized world, in this society where everything has to be very high in output. What you're doing next, what you're doing after that. What have you gotten from it as well? Very valid things in this certain culture, without question. There's a deeper part that I'm seeing that people aren't finding themselves in anymore. They're not tapping into that other side, the yin and the yang. They're not getting the moon with their sun. They're not getting their day with their night, and so on and so forth. What that second part they're not tapping into is the thing that has been here throughout any era of history, of the human experience, agricultural, industrial, this new information era that we're entering, and before that. The part that I want to help people tap into is recognize the long, eternal sense of self and peace and calm that lays within us. From there, you tap into that. And from that spring, you go out and participate into the world of the expectations and the needs and the desires. And then you're supposed to do this and not supposed to do that, and so on and so forth.
Do you know the story of the monk and the one who carried the woman across the river?
Yeah. I love that story.
If you could, can you please tell us that story?
It's a great story, great memories for that. I love that one. I haven't thought of that in a while. Yeah, so there are these two monks, Buddhist monks, that are walking down a trail together. And they come across this big body of water. One that you can walk through, but it's spread out. It's long to get through. Now, the older monk and the younger monk both know, because in the bhikkhu and the Buddhist monk tradition, they're not supposed to touch women. The older monk sees a woman that's standing there, is not too sure about crossing over through that water. So he takes her, puts her over his shoulder, and walks her through the water. Upon getting to the other side of the lake or the pond, he places her down, puts his hands together, he bows to her as monks do, and he goes on his way with the younger. About an hour goes by, and not much has been said. The younger monk turns to the older monk and says, "Why did you touch that woman? You know that our precepts, which Buddhist monks have 200 plus precepts they have to abide by. You know one of our precepts is to not touch women." The older monk turns to him and says, "You're still carrying her? I put her down an hour ago."
One of the reasons I wanted you to share the story with us is because you talked about letting go, right? To let go of, and the expectations, the bit I had asked for before. And the young monk, he had the expectations of his vows, of what he was supposed to be doing. And he saw an older monk before his eyes break those expectations, saying, "Hey, we're not supposed to do that." But yet the older monk was like, "I already let go of what, was already in the past." And sometimes we get caught up on that thing that went wrong in our life. It doesn't have to be that we touch someone we weren't supposed to touch, of course, but it could be something where we say, "You know what, we missed the opportunity." And what happens after that opportunity is missed is people, they develop a sense of time and they say, "Well, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. I will wait for the right moment." And yet, if you find yourself in waiting, you're going to be in that that hour time span of just thinking about what to say. You have something on your mind, but you're not saying it yet. And so today is definitely going to be hopefully an awakening for many individuals to say, "You know what, let's speak up. Let's take action. Let's look at the internal sense of self right now versus let's waiting an hour, a day, a week, a year before we say, you know what, let's figure out what truly matters." Because so many people, they'll go through life and then when they finally reach a goal that they thought would bring them happiness, they find that it wasn't there waiting for them. So, looking at the eternal self now, looking at maybe values and the systems and characters, what should a person be looking at to live a life that has some sense of semblance of happiness to them?
Sure. From them to them, right? Not trying to find it. Yeah. From them to them. So obviously the layers of joy come in the amalgamation of things, right? We do have studies showing that material things will bring us joy as well, without question. We know that. So in no way am I speaking in a dichotomy. It's not one way or the other. But what we have seen what's more is that the deeper sense of joy and fulfillment in someone's life are the ways that appeal and are blossomed from the internal parts. How do we do that, right? A couple of things that I usually remind myself of. It's resonating with myself, with the quiet space of who I am internally. For me, the way to do that is meditation. Some people find a myriad of things that they can do. It could be art, it could be dance, it could be writing, it could be conversation, it could be cooking, it could be whatever it is. But find the thing that when you're doing it, you forget what time it is. You forget what's going on in the news. You forget the thing that you were worried about at work or whatever it is. Find that and resonate, from that and through that. Find yourself in that pocket and then try to find as many ways as you can tap into that in other areas of your life. Because the thing that you're doing, meditation, cooking, writing, painting, rapping, cartwheeling, aerials, whatever it is, that is just a vehicle that got you back to that source. And at some point, like that woman who was on the shoulders of that monk, he was her vehicle to get across. And at some point, they separate. You pull your car up to the location, you get out, you walk in the building, you separate from that vehicle. That vehicle got you there. Now your job is to try to find the space that's there. So the thing you should be looking for to get more practical, and this is in my opinion, of course, I'm never one to say this is the way. The thing you should be searching for and looking for are the things that make you feel more inner peace. And when I say peace, I don't mean hippie peace, live and love and so on and so forth. That I agree with that, obviously, but I'm talking about something that's a little more profound than that. a little deeper than that. The silence of the self, the place where there's calm, the moment where you don't feel separate within your own self, the moment that you feel one. And when there's just oneness, there are no two things. And because there are no two things, there are no way for them to clash. And because there's no clashing, there is peace. That's what you should be searching for. From there is where the joy and the happiness and all that comes. I think people spend a lot of time trying to find the happiness and find the joy. Find the peace first. Out of that, then you'll see the happiness and the joy show.
There's a difference in the words that I'm going to use. And of course, you can use your experiences or maybe what you have learned on your journey is the difference between enlightenment and success. Enlightenment might be very similar to finding that peace, that stillness, that silence within. And success can be maybe same thing in the line of I'm successful because I can do that. But yet, success can also mean that I have a mansion. I have all these fast cars. I have a horde of women or men or whatever it be. So success can be used different, but enlightenment is very specific in this sense. And so my question is the difference between enlightenment and success.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. These sort of dialogues and these sort of words and phrases are so beautiful because language as a whole is so not static. It turns and changes in a million ways at any given second, let alone centuries and generations, right? So enlightenment is really fascinating in a lot of ways. So I'll start, I did in reverse the previous question. I went really abstract and went practical. I'm going to go practical and go the opposite way here. First thing first, enlightenment has to deal with, and this is generally what we know, of course. Like I said, I'm not one who says this is the way. I found a multitude of good ways. Enlightenment is and I mean this with pun intended, the illumination of the self, the part that lights you up. You listening here, whoever you are, you have met someone and you've seen them and say, this person is lit up. They have some vitality about them that is so unstoppable. You can't not see it. It is at some capacity energetically blinding. It's so light. Enlightenment is the realization of something vibrant living within you as a person. You've been illuminated by this thing. You've been lit up by this thing, right? Success is a little more external, in my opinion. And in my opinion, they're probably like 90-10 each side in their respective sides. Success is the external goal that you want and the attainment to get it. And then once you have it, you have succeeded at that. Now, let's keep in mind, very often, once you get that thing, do most people sit and say, got it, that's it, I'm done? Typically, it doesn't happen. Typically, they look at the next thing, right? And then the chasing starts, the cycle starts. And that can be fun. It can also be very damaging because you're spending your time looking externally, looking for the cycle to keep turning itself over when there's a middle part there. Instead of being the hands on the clock they go around, be the dot in the middle, center, recognized, right? So success can be seen as that. Some people actually do feel joy from having 12 cars. Totally understandable. I totally get it. I'm a Black and Spanish man from the South who grew up in a very violent household, very depressed household. And a lot of my times I was hungry. And then I moved from the South to Los Angeles on my own, never met anybody, never knew anybody, never been here before, slept in my car and figured out my life. I live here 10 years now in Los Angeles and I'm a self-employed man. I can say, as a Buddhist, even as a Buddhist, I should say, and this is a hard thing for people to swallow because we were told the opposite growing up. Having money does make you happy, without question. Because to not have it and to be starving and hungry and scared and stressed makes you miserable. So to relieve that by default brings you a level of happiness. The question is, how far does that happiness get you, right? What does Bob Marley say? If you chase money, you'll never be happy because money is numbers and numbers go on and on, right? So that's a realization of it. And that external thing in this life really matters. I am in the most successful version of my life right now. And I can sense myself feeling better. Now, if I turn and chase it and rely my happiness on that, then I've flatlined. I've completely lost. There's a long Hindu story of the humbling of Indra. I think it's not the Upanishads. It's in another Hindu text. And it's kind of like this man shot himself way up. He was very boastful about his external things, and he was reminded that in any moment, he could be just as simple as the ants walking on the ground. It's called the humbling of Indra, if anybody has an interest. Indra, Indra. So those two sides play a really fascinating part, right? But and this is super long-winded here, I recognize this. This is a very fantastic question because it covers the two sides of existence, the inner world, the outer world. Success really matters. 100%. We totally recognize that. It matters even more in this capitalistic society, which is not an absolute, but it is a temporary reality. So we should appeal to it, and we should live through it as best we can and try to make things as better as possible. But the one that's internal, enlightenment, that is the one. That's the reason why. That's the reason why during the darkest times of the planet, over the north part of the equator, we have holidays that have to do with lighting and candles. Christmas, you light the tree. Hanukkah, you have the candles that go across. Kwanzaa, same thing with the candles across. Now let's go to the eastern side. We have Diwali in India, where they light candles and light flames, and they're all based on stories, right? And then we have in Buddhism, in December 8th or 9th, depending on the year, we have what's called Bodhi Day. It's the day that the Buddha woke up, which is also called enlightenment, right? We symbolize and recognize how important this is for us to be able to be lit up within ourselves. And right now we live in a society where it's very external. Totally recognize that. We have everything that we need here. Look at you and I having this conversation that we wouldn't have had otherwise. Because technology, because our abundance of information, I can order on Amazon right now goats to come eat the front of my yard, to mow my yard. Tell me if my ancestors could do that. They could not. So we, without question, have so much more. And that is a level of success that is beyond what our ancestors had. I will say, though, those ancestors probably had a deeper understanding of the internal, because we're still reading their books. We're still reading their rituals and their practices and so on and so forth. So those two sides have to play a lot. And that was a lot of information for me to just throw out there. But it's really important to recognize that they both are important. And one of them, in my opinion, should be put first. And that is enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is no time limit for the guests. I just want to throw it out there. There's no time limit.
Cool.
Or appropriate time. You could talk 20 minutes.
Cool.
Before we got on this call, I emptied my cup.
Great, thanks.
I'm here learning.
Cool.
One of the things I think people fail to do is they keep their cup full, and they think their cup has to always be full and not be the student, not be a learner, not give themselves new aspects to life, because the life that you might have been growing up in might be good, but then maybe it's the negative side, very similar to you growing up in that household of hunger and anger. You changed. You said, you know what, this doesn't have to be my forever. And sometimes people, they say, this is my circumstance. So they stay stuck and they don't look for more. They might look for the external validation. They might look for someone else to be their happiness, right? I want my wife to love me. I want my husband to love me. You're supposed to make me happy. But yet the roles are not like that, like in a working marriage, It takes two healthy people coming together. And I use the word healthy, not meaning that someone doesn't have things to deal with, right? Like you can take two broken people and they can know how to love and learn how to live together. One of the things I'm sure people are thinking about is, like if, like I use the word enlightenment, but it could be many different words. They can say, well, do I look for it or does it find me? Do I look for happiness or does, or do I fall into it? And, many people, they are going to have to face some realization at some point. Are they the people who are the proponent of who they become, or are they just kind of a factor in the whole scheme of the world and their destiny?
Agreed. I could not agree more in so many ways. It's a very deep juggle there. We spend so much time hoping for the other person, especially in a relationship sense, of the joy, hoping that they're the one that could bring us that joy. And I don't blame people either. That seems like that would be the appropriate way, right? Because they're giving you something. Like, that's fantastic. That's minimal output, maximum input, right? If you're expecting them to bring you stuff, joy, peace, love, romanticism, flowers, food, intimacy, whatever. I totally recognize that. And then also on top of that, this society we live in has in film and in art and in dialogue and in marketing and in all that the relationship and the family has to be. You watch the commercial of the married couple and they're just smiling together and they're so happy and so on and so forth. So we looked outwards for it, right? And then on top of that, we have high divorce rates. So something is not gelling together. And it's not a knock on divorce whatsoever. Listen, I don't think we should be stuck with each other forever if you're not feeling it. Please let each other go and find the best version of yourself that's waiting for you. But what I will say is that if someone feels like they are relying on their partner, or their partner is a source of their happiness, just do an inventory and check how many times you two have been upset with each other in the week, in the month maybe, and see what it comes out to. I don't have the answer, obviously, but see what that is. And then I would just throw out a challenge, a test. Spend the next month really focusing on how can I make my own self happy in both of them. And then when you can, at any open pockets, just turn and just gratify that partner for what they did well for themselves. And then see what that feels like after a month. Just test it out. See what happens for you. Because I've said this for the third time now, but it's serious. There is no the way. There are a multitude of a ways. But what we have seen more than not is the people who search for the joy in themselves, end up being happier in life, more successful in their tasks, whether it's just creating a song and no one else hears it, or whether it's running a company. They've been more fulfilled in their life. And they go out into the world and want to help other people find their version of that. I can't do it for you, but I can point to you and say, oh, yeah. I know where the map is for that. You got to go walk and go get it on your own. But yeah, please go for it. Absolutely. The why is The Wizard of Oz still so popular? Why is it so popular still? It is a great journey that we all know about. You start somewhere, you go out into the world, you come back to where you started with new information. That's the arc that works for us since the beginning of storytelling. But what's really cool is that Dorothy got to the beginning of the Yellow Brick Road and ran into these people who also needed stuff. The Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow, they also needed things as well. And not one of them could give the other one what they needed, but they could walk together. And not one of them said, don't worry, Dorothy. Don't worry, girl. We go ahead and take care of it for you. We'll go ahead. We'll go. Don't worry, girl. You chill. Don't trip. That's all good. We'll be back. We'll bring you back, home or whatever you're looking at. The shoes, I think it was. They all walked together. So there's something to be said about you got to do the work. You will have the allies without question. My job as a public speaker is never to tell you I have what you need. If I say that, I have done an injustice to myself, my integrity, my honesty, and the listener, because I've assumed that they don't have what it takes. But you do. You absolutely do. 100% you got what it takes. But if I am on this journey as well, if I see you on this yellow brick road, then I'll say, yeah, let's go together. Let's go. And then they're off to see the wizard, right? And then, of course, this is where the story gets even more dynamic because they get to the external place and it wasn't what they thought it was. The wizard himself was just this angry, unhappy man. So there's your external symbolism again. What you're looking for out there isn't it. There's no place like home. The metaphor there is the internal, what you're familiar, what's already here. No place like home is where the heart is. You are the source of it, right? That's why that movie is still so damn popular. And that's why Wicked is Wicked, like we recognize that. So there's something to be said about, having the allies. Those people in your life, you don't have to look at them and say, you're not my source of happiness. That's not the best way to go about it. I'm my source of happiness. You are my ally in this. You are my partner in this. And then I want you to do that same version for you. And I can help you go along the way and fight those metaphorical monkeys with the wings on it, like in the movie, right? You still got to walk the yellow brick road.
Yeah, we're living in a disconnected world. I mean, we have never been more connected in the sense of social media. Here we are, different states. We can even be different parts of the world, right? And we can still have this conversation, and this episode could still air. And I think people, they take it for granted, in a sense, because I can always call my mom, but do you? I can always talk to my dad whenever, but are you, right? Like children, the same thing. They are so busy growing up, they forget their parents are growing old. And this disconnection is creating a mindset where people have become so individualized, where I can do this by myself. But then I like to always bring up the fact of, do you know how to garden? Do you know how to grow vegetables? Some people, they do, right? But the majority of people, they don't. They don't know how to put a seed in dirt and take care of it, right? Like, it sounds so simple. Like, I make it sound stupid simple, but it's more than that. You have to understand the climate. You have to understand what you're growing. I remember I come from Connecticut, and we have a very different season, or like the weather is very different than Texas. And so up there, I was able to grow everything. My garden was lush. It was flourishing. And the first year we had a garden down here, it was struggling. and I said, what is going on? I guess I lost my green thumb. But then I said, I didn't lose anything. I have to understand where I am right now. Texas is different than Connecticut. And so I had to learn. And people, they take for granted what they have. They get their microwave TV dinners, or they get their Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever it is. They go to the grocery store and they pick up their produce. But there was someone who had a skill for that, who said, I'm going to grow these vegetables, these tomatoes, these peppers, etc. And you take them home, and there's a barter system where you work for your money and you give your time for some dollars, and you say, you know what, I work for this. And in a sense, yes, right? But then you think that you did it all by yourself, but yet you don't see all the moving pieces that have made your table plentiful. All those Thanksgiving turkeys, they didn't come from you just giving $29 to get this turkey, right? There was so much more involved in it. And so we are living in a world that's disconnected. And my question to you is, what would happen, or what would be the trends that we would be seeing coming up if people are allowed to live in this isolation, or this individualized type of mindset of being disconnected?
Yeah, I am a big proponent of Alvin Toffler. He was a futurist and a businessman. And he described culture shifting, changing like ocean waves. I think we see a lot of them as like new chapter, new book, new block. But that's not how it works. It's like an ocean wave where the wave is going forward, but on the ground, some of it's receding under, going the opposite way. And some pieces of the wave go to the next wave and some stay behind. There's all this kind of play that happens, right? So we have a large percentage of isolation right now in this culture, without question. It's expected. I was going to say we should, but not should like we're supposed to. It's expected because we're having such an abundance of information. I mean, geez, man. Some of the poorest people in America are still richer than the kings and queens of 150 years ago because of running hot water, and Netflix. You know what I mean? Like so there's a beauty about that. And like everything in this world, we throttle a little too far over as a culture. We go a little too far to one end for too long. Eventually, there'll be some pushback, and we've already seen some of that pushback in a futuristic sense where we started working from home a little more. And then, of course, the pandemic happened and people got really into working from home. And there's a little more isolation there. I am actually, for the most part, like you should work from home from a quality of life sense, not from a individualist sense, from a quality of life. So I recognize that, and I see the pushback from other companies like, no, bring it back in here. They got a budget they got to make, and so on and so forth. And some of the studies show a lot of people feeling more isolated. So I can hold both of those at the same time, right? But to like narrow into your question is, what do I think would happen if we got more and more isolated? Yeah, I'm not a cynical person. I don't really care for cynicism. It's limiting, it's boring, and it will limit your ability to problem solve. What I find more so is people find new ways to communicate and connect. We'll go through an ebb and flow, like everything in the world, of change without question, because all change hurts. You see a lot of isolation like we're seeing already, and then at some point something pops up because there'll be a need for lack of isolation, and somebody, if it's still happening in this society, a capitalist society, it'll show up as a business, right? People are staying home on the internet in the 90s for too much instead of going outside. So someone says, what if we made college profiles and used the internet to do it? Okay, now what if we brought it to people outside of the college campus and they can put their picture and connect with each other? And then we found a new way to connect, and they call that Facebook, right? And then someone else said, well, some people are staying at home because they don't want to go too far anyway because they don't like their neighborhood. What if we took the taxi company and tied it with Facebook? So you have a profile to your taxi company, and that was called Uber, right? There was a need for that. And then we get to this stage where, again, the ebb and the flow, it starts to dip again. We start feeling a little more isolated because we lean too far into it. But then at the same time, I live in Los Angeles, and the fires happened not too long ago. And we use all this technology and we band it together. And people are spending more time again together. We are recognizing how valuable it is for community. And I guess essentially what I probably should have started with is I don't have the answer to it, but what I know is that humans are resilient, and we iterate and reiterate in so many ways that you can't expect it. You can't see it. But to the people, to get more specific again, the people who are feeling isolation in the here and now, I would highly recommend that you don't need to go to a mix and mingle event of 30 people. You might just need one person to connect to. You might be an introvert, but also you might be an ambivert, which is a person who is an extrovert in the right scenarios. And you might have to find that as well. Because our allies are still there. The movie Wizard of Oz wouldn't have worked if it was just Dorothy walking by herself, strolling, skipping, and so on and so forth. I mean, it may have if they wrote it right, because, it's actors and writers, of course, but there's something to be said about our allies. Think about every movie you've ever seen, and somewhere along the way of that main character, they found at least one. We need that. We're social animals, so we need that without question. That last part I'm saying is directly spoken to anybody who feels isolated at the moment. I also will say at the same time, if I may, this is I really would like to say this actually a lot, is if anybody is listening to this and they do feel lonely, my website, I send out newsletters 2 to 5 a month on CesarCardona.com. And I fill my newsletters with data and source good news happening in the world and ways that we can connect to each other. And I'm always available and open for you to send me an email, and you can vent and let it out. You are in the most safest space whatsoever. If somebody is hearing this and they feel lonely, you are in an absolute safe space without question. You can even say in the beginning, Cesar, I don't even want a response. I just want to get it out to somebody. Or you can say, Cesar, what do you think about it? And I'm happy to give you whatever you need. So if someone's listening to this and they feel isolated, I would recommend start there first. And then after that, if you want to connect with somebody close in your area, I'll do whatever I can to help you find something like that without question. That is a guarantee.
Yeah, I think we would definitely fall back into community. It's just like how history goes. It's very similar to the saying, it's like good times create weak men create tough times, or like that saying, right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
So it's very similar to that, where we kind of go with the system of how the world is going. And I think of wartime. In wartime, yeah, sure. Before wartime, no one was like, everyone's on their phones inside and things like that. But when it's wartime, right now, people are like, let's go to church, let's hang out, let's create those third connections again. And
beautifully said.
And then eventually they fade again, right? It just goes with that circle again. So it's like we're in this loop. And what I find sometimes is people, they fight that loop. They say, you know what? I'm not going to look on the inside. I'm not going to internalize. And I think this is why some people, they dislike meditation, because they have to face the reality of who they are, of everything, of the person they are, the person they are afraid to become, or the person that they have been. And so to face that person sometimes can be scary, because maybe, looking at that person, it doesn't bring you joy. It doesn't bring you happiness, right? It doesn't give you a semblance of, all right, I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right things. And I think of like group meditation classes, and typically like they'll have a big event, a retreat. It'll be 3 to 5 days, sometimes longer, depending on which ones you get, of course. And you're not supposed to talk. It's just you're supposed to sit in isolation, in a sense, just there with your thoughts on your cushion. And of course, there's some time to speak with the facilitator. Typically it could be like a monk, a priest, or something, and you might talk for 10 to 30 minutes depending, right? And you would just kind of say some of the things that might be going on, right? You might talk about the cushion is hard, you might talk about you're having a hard time focusing, things like that, and then they give you guidance, they give you feedback. It's not you're going to go there and for 1 week never talk to anybody, but yet it can feel like that, where ask yourself this question: do you know your neighbors? I know all of my neighbors, right? Like, I'm not isolated in my neighborhood saying, all right, I live in this house, you live in that house. My business is my business, your business is your business. But yet, my business, we don't necessarily want out there, right? They say the skeleton's in the closet. So many people, they will put on a front, they'll put on an act. So I'll go to social media and I'll have the smiles and I'll take all the selfies, and you'll see my loving relationships and my kids smiling, but you didn't see before me yelling at my kids, right? And maybe me having to, do some type of corporal punishment for them to say, hey, focus, right? We got to make sure everyone loves us. But yet, the perception of us, it seems like, is more than the perception of the world. Like the views are more harsh on our end. So like if we're not showing up, to be honest, it doesn't matter what anyone else is thinking, because if someone else says you're not showing up, it's like, like you haven't walked in my shoes before. And so we are at a standstill almost, where people, I think they want to get out of this isolation. They want to break free, but I think one of the biggest obstacles is themselves accepting who they are or who they have been. And so, the question I would like to, bring to this conversation is, if a person knows they are the asset, or the person that, like looking at the internal self again, right? We are the key to that happiness, to that love, and to the sense of being home. Why are more people not diving into it every single day?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why, if we all know that pizza is not great for us, why do we eat it? I'm a sober person. As a Buddhist, we don't take intoxicants, but we know to be intoxicated, toxic is in the word. We know it's bad for us, yet we still do it, don't we? I can go on and on with that, can I? There's tons of it. I think that it's in our nature. Well, there's a lot of reasons. Okay. First thing first, our ancestors, they needed scarcity and reward, right? A need and a reward, a need and reward, need and reward. And we did this over and over again. And the people and the tribes who did it the best got rewarded by procreating, and we're here because of that. So that scarcity mentality with a reward was met multiple times. Thousands upon thousands of generations is when we first started being conscious enough to say, what if I disciplined myself a little bit? But by that time, the reward system in our thinking, in our brain, had been deeply rooted in our psyche. So the reward system is so much older than our discipline system. So it has a really hard time winning against a reward system. So that's from a psychological, chemical perspective, right? So keep in mind, if you feel like it's hard for you to be disciplined, remember that you have ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years who didn't need to discipline themselves whatsoever. So give yourself some slack. Be kind to yourself about it. Secondly, we live in a society where we want the short-term gain off that. We want it very quickly. We want that. We want it so much. And the society has instilled that in us too, as well, right? Anything I want to know right now, I can look up on my phone. Anything I want to know, I can look it up on my phone and Google it. I can chat GPT it and get it even more now, right? A beautiful thing, by the way. It's a beautiful thing, but let's put it in its place. So what's more about that is that also puts you right back in accord with that external searching, all of the reward systems that come from the external. Our ancestors, the more things that they ate that had a little more sugar in it, it fattened them up and helped them survive when it was cold outside. And also during battle. Side note, we have ribs over our organs, but we don't under the lower part of our belly button, which is why we get extra weight there, because we've evolved over time to have a little more protection and warmth because the bones aren't there to protect us. Side note, I also was a boxing trainer for 8 years, so I learned a bunch about the anatomy. That being said, and now I'm going to go specifically to the actual watching of the mind as well, right? We moving on from the sweets, and we like sugary stuff for that reason. Going straight to the mind of who we are, why we don't want to sit with our own selves. It's for all the reasons I just mentioned, but also it's because, like you said, we have such trouble with seeing ourselves, seeing parts of us that are uncomfortable, seeing parts of things that we have done from before that are cringeworthy, things that incite anger in us, things that incite fear in us. But plot twist, your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings, your actions, they are not you. They are secondary. Think about one thing you believe right now in your life. Did you believe it the same exact way, let alone at all, when you were 5 years old? Think about one feeling you had about something. Did you feel it the same exact way? Let alone, did you have that even feeling when you were 5? No, you picked it up along the way. It changes over time. It iterates over time. How about your actions? Therefore, what you use for your actions, your physical body. Your body, your hands. If someone's listening now and they're not driving, look at your hands. Think about, did your hands look like that when you were 5? What about your hair? What about the things that you believed about the world? Were they all the same? They're not. They're always going to ever change. So those things aren't you. They're temporary versions of you. The shirt you're wearing, is it you? No, it's you today. You take it off at some point. Therefore, by default, it's a byproduct of some of the choices you've made. And in meditation, you get to watch those things happen. And little by little, if you recognize all those thoughts that come and go, you can start to see the thought, the feelings, the emotions, the actions, so on and so forth, the anger, the fear. And you can start to see it show up in patterns, in rhythms. And the more you can do that, is the better you can get a good glimpse on it. Because if you've seen it once, you've seen it again and over again, all of those things, who is watching that? Who is watching that fear happen? You weren't that anger because you're sitting there with your eyes closed in meditation. It showed up though. And you can see yourself saying, oh, I'm angry right now. Who was the person that just said I am angry? That's a separation. Your job is to resonate with the consciousness, being aware of those things. So the people who are scared or worried about their identity or who they are, what they've done, in the waking, living world with other people, if you harm somebody, without question, make those amends. Try to make it as better as possible. But if you want to absolve it from within your own self, you have to remember that it's not you. It's a secondary thing. What you really are is the conscious awareness that perceived and experienced all of it. All of the changes from when you were 5 to you were 15, 25, 35, and so on and so forth. It was always your conscious awareness that was there, and it's eternal because it has no smell, no form, no taste. It never runs out of, it never gets exhausted. Even when you go to deep sleep, I wake you up, now you know that you were in deep sleep. So deep sleep isn't absence of consciousness. It's consciousness of being absent. Huge difference there. That's who you really are. And when you recognize that, it becomes easier to be okay with the things that you've done that may not have been so great. And that's okay because you can separate it. I'm currently at this moment right now dealing with some things that a choice, artistic and business choice that I made that made me embarrassed. Like just today it happened. And all day today, I am feeling my thoughts saying, that's really embarrassing. It made me insecure about all my next thoughts that I made in the day. Made me very insecure. In no way am I going to push them away because it's something I have to work through. And I know that all of my actions and those thoughts aren't me. They were choices I made in the moment They weren't the best choices. I'm embarrassed, and I can feel that embarrassment now because I'm not identifying with the embarrassment. I'm just wearing the shirt of the embarrassment. And at some point, the shirt will come.
Yeah. I think of like when you're about to go on stage or something and you trip on the step, right? The first thing I would say is, who put that step there?
Exactly.
And the reality was the step was always there, right? I just paid attention, right? Sometimes it wasn't a graceful bringing to attention, right? Like I could have felt it. I could have looked at it and said, there's a step there. Or I could have fallen like I did and said, there was a step there. And sometimes in life, we have those hiccups. We have those traumas, the things that shake us awake, sometimes violently. And we're like, whoa, I'm paying attention. Most people, they don't take action when things are going good. People don't call me and say, Michael, everything is going good in my life. Just want to check in with you, Mike. No, they say, I'm having trouble with my marriage. I'm having trouble with my finance. I'm having trouble with my career. And they tell me all of their issues. And we work together and we figure out solutions. But one of the things I love to do is to bring attention to things that are the problem right now, things that might not be a big deal, but are a deal. And so we just have to be paying attention. Are we truly present in the moment? Most people who are just kind of going in their day, they just do it because it's routine. But when's the last time you said, let me, get my foot and lift off the gas a little bit and let me pay attention. Let me roll down the windows and feel the breeze. Let me feel the sun. Let me smell the air, feel the wind against me, the rain on my skin. Everyone's worried about getting wet, but half the people fail to feel the rain, right? Or just feel life. And so today is going to be an opportunity for you once again to feel, for you once again to learn and understand or relearn, to say, hey, everything that's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, is life. And I'm sure the people who are no longer here will love to have those bad moments again. To
Well
say,
said.
like those moments where they felt embarrassed, because that's what it truly means to live, right? To be able to navigate all of these emotions and feelings, the hot, the cold, the sad, the happy, the angry, right? It might not feel good sometimes, the negative ones at least. But when you can have that yin and the yang, it makes you appreciate the good moments so much more. So today, I hope it was a good moment for you as the audience, and for you to, understand, there's going to be ups and downs in life. And Cesar, I could talk to you all day about this, but I do want to get some final words from you. And then, of course, please tell everyone where they can find you, reach out to you. I know you gave us the newsletter, but just give it to us again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So two things that are most important. Cesar Cardona, CESAR, CARD as in David, ONA.com. I assume you'll put that in the show notes. You can find my newsletters there. You can contact me from there. You can find all my information is kind of a hub there. Also, what's more is that just recently, my partner and I started a podcast as well called Beauty in the Break. And it's stories about resilience during tough times. It's available everywhere, Beauty in the Break. That's also on the website as well. You can see that. But those are the two main areas. The first thing you asked me for was closing comments, or did you want to grab something? Do you want to say something else before I go to that? No? Okay. This is the thing that I say constantly, because 8 years of being a boxing trainer, seeing people work through things, seeing them physically work through something while boxing, and of course, establishing a rapport with them. So they told me about their personal life, seeing how they responded to things, seeing how they viewed their own self in situations, and then just general life things, and then watching myself as well. I found one phrase that I think should be said more to each other and should be practiced like a mantra. It's very simple. Be kind to yourself.
I think of that mantra and I think of what is kindness, because kindness is one of those things I think people, they take for granted. They think of, oh, you held the door open for me. Is that kindness, or is that just being cordial? Right? Is the guy being chivalrous, or like, does he just want my number? And there's maybe that external thing, like where someone might be vying for something. And I remember when I first moved to Texas, from Connecticut. It's a very different type of people down here, very cordial, very friendly. And one of the things I struggled with the most was I have to understand I'm not in Connecticut anymore, right? We are not in Kansas anymore, right? Wizard of Oz.
Nice.
And,
good callback.
I had to realize I was in a different place. I had to realize that there was people around that were different than the people I grew up with. These people were so much more caring. They were so much more kind. And at first it was off-putting. I was like, wait, what do they want from me? And the reality was they wanted nothing but maybe a moment of my time. They just wanted to maybe, learn about what I did so maybe they can say, hey, let me support you. And one of the reasons why we have coaching in session is not for you to just fall in love with a guest or to listen to, me speak, but for you to, understand that there are people out there who care. There are people out there who want to see you do well, better than you are right now. Realize that who you are today doesn't have to be who you are tomorrow. And so today can be an opportunity, if you are not in a good spot, maybe a negative mindset, for you to change, for you to realize that something is not going your way and to say, I'm going to take some action today. And whether that action be checking out the links in the description box below, reaching out to Cesar, or maybe just doing some meditation, some journaling, beginning a practice to, internalize what's going on so you can conceptualize what you need to do next. It's all a process. Life is a journey in a sense. And I appreciate, Cesar, you coming on, sharing your journey a little bit, your mindset, your take on so many different things. It was so enlightening in the sense of maybe enlightenment, but we are not there yet, right? We are still seeking so much more out of life. I always tell people, do the work to find out what that is before you just kind of haphazardly jump ship without your parachute. Cesar, as we are closing, I just want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate you so much. And then, of course, for, being a great guest and having a cordial conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you.